Imagine hiring an architect to build your company's new flagship headquarters. You walk into their office and hand them a crumpled sticky note.
Right, just a rough concept.
Yeah, exactly. Just a sticky note that says, make it punchy and use a lot of lime green, and maybe you toss a couple of paint swatches on their desks.
Sounds like a nightmare for the architect.
Or absolutely. But imagine you turn around, you go grab an espresso down the street, and by the time you walk back 15 minutes later, there is a fully constructed, wired, plumbed, and structurally sound skyscraper waiting for you right in the parking lot.
That is quite the visual.
I mean, for decades, software design was a game of rigid, pixel-perfect blueprints, right? You drew the wireframes, you measured the digital lumber, and every single digital nail had to be explicitly placed by a human hand.
Yeah, we've basically been living in an era of manual masonry. The digital spaces we inhabit, like every app, every website you use, they're built on the foundational concept of deterministic structure.
Meaning everything has its exact place.
Exactly. A button is explicitly coded to be, say, 20 pixels from the edge of the screen. If it's not, the interface breaks. The entire history of graphic design and software engineering has been about humans desperately trying to exert manual control over these really chaotic digital environments.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because reading through our source material today for this deep dive, I felt like I was getting a genuine, unvarnished glimpse into the end of that exact era.
It really feels like a paradigm shift.
It does. We are looking at a fundamental shift in how human beings interact with technology. And it's being driven by a sudden and honestly highly anticipated drop from Anthropic Labs called Claude Design.
Yes, the new Claude Design feature.
Right. And for you listening, our sources today are as fresh as they get. We are pulling from a real-time, completely unscripted YouTube walkthrough by a creator named Elliot Prince.
It's a great source because it's so raw.
Yeah, he literally just turned his camera on and captured the raw experience of logging into his account after lunch to test this brand new feature. It's powered by the Opus 4.7 vision model, and we are exploring a tool that promises to blur the lines entirely between conversational AI, graphic design, and software engineering.
It's doing a lot of heavy lifting.
It's not just about making pretty pictures anymore. We're talking about a system that builds its own infrastructure, researches real-world data for you, and literally writes its own code.
What's fascinating here is that we have to frame this correctly right out of the gate. This is not just a software update.
Right, it's not just version 2.0 of something.
Exactly. And it certainly isn't just another little feature tacked onto a chatbot. We are witnessing an evolution in user interface architecture. It forces us to completely reevaluate where the bottleneck of creation actually sits.
But, before an AI can build an app,
Yeah.
it has to know what it's building it for, right? It needs a personality, a framework. And that is where Elliot's experiment starts to look less like coding and more like psychology almost.
Oh, for sure. Setting the tone is everything.
So when he logs in after lunch, and he actually mentions he burned through his standard credits testing Opus 4.7 all morning, he sees Claude Design sitting there on his dashboard.
Which was rolled out pretty quietly, right?
Yeah, super quietly. It was launched for Pro Max team plans and rolled out via simple post on X throughout the day. It introduces itself as a way to make prototypes, slides, and one-pagers simply by talking to Claude.
Just natural language.
Right. But it doesn't just ask him what he wants to build. The very first thing it demands is the DNA of his brand. It basically asks him to import a design system.
And that request alone represents a massive leap in how we approach digital architecture. To understand the gravity of this, you have to look at what a design system actually entails in a traditional corporate environment.
It's usually a huge headache.
It's a massive months-long undertaking. I mean, a team of senior designers will spend weeks just defining the typographical hierarchy. They are literally calculating the exact mathematical ratios between a main header, a subheader, and body text.
It's very precise.
Highly precise. They define the exact hex codes for primary, secondary, and tertiary colors. They establish rigid rules for spacing, padding, drop shadow depths, interaction states, the works.
And then they have to document all of that somewhere.
Exactly. They document all of this in a massive repository so that any future software engineer knows exactly what parameters to follow. And Claude Design just asks for a few files and a conversational prompt to automate that entire bureaucratic process.
Which is wild. And Elliot's approach to this is incredibly casual. It's almost to the point of being dismissive. He decides to create a mock-up for his company Prince AI training.
Which is a great test case.
Yeah, but he literally just drags and drops a folder from his desktop containing his brand guidelines, a couple of custom fonts, and his logos. That's
And
it.
just dumping files into the browser?
Exactly. And for the prompt, he just tells Claude that his brand voice is relaxed British English and punchy. Visually, he says the brand switches between a dark mode featuring lime colors or a cream design with forest green running through it.
That is a very abstract set of instructions.
Very abstract. That is his entire instruction set. He clicks submit, and the system calmly informs him that it's going to take about 15 minutes to generate the design system. It just runs in the background.
Now, the concept at play here is what the industry is calling vibe coding. Elliot actually mentions this in his video, drawing comparisons to emergent platforms like Replit or Lovable.
Vibe coding, I love that term.
It's a great term. Vibe coding is a total paradigm shift away from deterministic programming. Instead of writing specific line-by-line instructions, the user provides a natural language description of the aesthetic intent, the vibe, essentially.
A feeling of the brand.
Exactly. The AI's job is to interpret that highly subjective, abstract human preference and compile it into concrete, mathematical digital architecture.
Wait, hold on. Let me push back on that 15-minute time frame for a second.
Yeah.
Because 15 minutes in AI generation speed seems like an absolute eternity.
It is a very long time in AI years.
Right. Usually, you hit enter on a complex prompt, and the model is spitting out a 10-page essay in like 4 seconds. Does that 15-minute wait time indicate that the system is struggling? Or does it mean it's doing something fundamentally heavier than just text generation?
That temporal friction is actually the biggest clue to what is really happening under the hood. It is absolutely not struggling. It is performing an enormous amount of foundational logic work.
Foundational logic. Okay, break that down.
Well, when you ask a traditional language model to write an essay, it is performing sequential token prediction. It's a linear output, just word after word.
Right.
But what Claude Design is doing during that 15-minute window is building systemic, multi-layered architecture. The source explicitly notes that on the left side of the screen, Elliot can see the AI extracting everything it needs and autonomously writing the core CSS files.
So for anyone who hasn't poked around under the hood of a website, CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. It's the code that actually gives the internet its visual flavor, right? Like colors, layouts, fonts.
Precisely. But CSS is highly mathematical. The AI isn't just painting a flat picture of a website to show Elliot what it might look like. It is establishing the foundational variables that will govern the entire digital ecosystem.
It's laying the pipes.
It really is.
Yeah.
It is taking that abstract, subjective word punchy and digitizing it. The Opus 4-point SLIN model has to decide what punchy means in a mathematical, programmatic sense.
Wow. So it has to quantify a vibe.
Exactly. Does punchy mean thicker font weights? Does it mean a tighter line height or a negative letter spacing value? Does it mean a highly aggressive contrast ratio between the background and the text? The AI is translating human aesthetic emotion into pixel spacing, typographical hierarchy, and structural code.
It's taking the word punchy and translating it into a literal margin size in a CSS file. That requires an incredible translation of human psychology into mathematics.
It's a massive leap.
And it's doing this for both light and dark modes simultaneously. It's extracting the exact brand colors, grabbing his specific lime and forest greens without him ever typing a specific hex code. It's like hiring a junior designer, tossing them a folder of fonts and a vague sticky note about lime green and punchy vibes, and telling them to build an entire corporate brand book while you go get coffee.
The computational load there is staggering. It has to cross-reference the uploaded brand guidelines with the structural properties of the custom fonts. It has to establish accessibility-compliant contrast ratios for both the lime on dark and the green on cream modes.
Which is a whole job in itself.
Oh, absolutely. And then it has to write the global CSS tokens that allow an application to switch between those modes seamlessly. This isn't just generating text, you know. It's compiling a functional logic gate for visual design.
So Elliot waits it out. He notes it actually took just under 10 minutes in reality, not the full 15. And the system presents him with a series of interactive cards. It's essentially saying, I've digested your brand, here's your new digital identity, do you approve?
That review phase is super important.
Yeah, he's flicking through the dark mode cards, checking out the headers and the text. He notes that the AI pulled a specific body type straight out of his uploaded files and just perfected the spacing.
It figured out the kerning and line height automatically.
Yeah, he actually jokes in the video that his girlfriend, who is a professional graphic designer, is going to lose her mind when she sees this.
No.
because it automated the creation of a complete design system with zero code base or Figma file to start from.
This review process is the critical guardrail of the entire workflow. The AI has ingested the brand's DNA, formulated a hypothesis of what the design should look like based on the vibe prompt, and now it requires human verification to ensure the mutation was successful.
Right, checking its homework.
Mm.
But the AI isn't infallible. While he's reviewing the generated cards, Elliot actually catches an accessibility flaw.
Right, the contrast issue.
Yeah, he notices a header where the text is split. Some of it is lime green and some of it is black. On the dark mode background, the lime green pops beautifully, but the black text completely vanishes in the background. It's totally unreadable.
A classic failure of contrast ratios. In traditional web development, fixing that requires a developer to hunt down the specific CSS class governing that header.
Which can take forever.
It can. You have to manually adjust the hex code for the dark mode media query, save the file, and then rebuild the entire application to see if the new color actually passes accessibility standards.
And this is where the interface completely flips the script. Elliot doesn't open a code editor. He doesn't even write a long prompt explaining the issue. He literally just highlights the invisible black text right there on the screen mockup.
He just clicks right on it.
Yeah, he uses an inline feedback tool and types a quick conversational note saying the readability is broken and needs fixing. And the AI instantly processes the spatial context of his highlight, calculates the contrast failure, and tweaks that specific CSS rule globally. The left-hand panel auto-updates the code live.
That specific interaction sets the stage for the next major leap in this technology. We are moving from the foundational setup of a design system to the actual creation of a high-fidelity mockup.
Getting into the real meat of the project.
Exactly. The AI has digested the brand rules, the human has verified them, and now it's time to see how the system behaves when tasked with a complex, interactive project.
So Elliot clicks a button labeled New Design using this system. He bypasses the wireframe option entirely and goes straight for a high-fidelity product mockup. He decides to build an app for a networking event he's running in Cornwall in a couple of weeks, calling it the AI Networker Cornwall and Turo.
It's scheduled for April 18th, right?
Yeah, April 18th. And his prompt is just a massive brain dump. He throws in himself as the keynote speaker, casually adds Alex Hormozy and Gary Vee as supporting speakers, and asks for 4 distinct sections.
What were the sections again?
He asked for a run of events page with clickable expanding times, a how to get there section, a where to stay section, and an FAQ.
And the architectural decisions are also being negotiated conversationally here. The interface asks him how these sections should connect. He specifies a top pill nav layout.
Right, like those little rounded buttons at the top?
Exactly. And then it asks what should happen when a user clicks a speaker profile and he tells it to expand the information inline rather than opening a completely new page.
As soon as he submits that, the left-hand panel just erupts into code generation. But here's where it gets really interesting, because we are finally getting past what I call the describe it until you're blue in the face phase of AI generation.
Oh, that phase is the worst.
It's agonizing. Anyone who has tried to use an AI image generator or an early coding assistant knows the sheer agony of this loop. You get an output that is 90% perfect, but the primary button is the wrong color. So you type, make the button red.
And it makes it red but breaks something else.
Exactly. The AI makes the button red, but inexplicably changes your font to Comic Sans. You type, change the font back, and it does, but now the button is blue again. It's maddening.
You're describing the conversational back and forth limitation. Historically, natural language processing models treat every prompt as a slightly new contextual universe. It really struggles with state permanence.
It's like being a film director, but you aren't allowed on set. You have to sit in a trailer a mile away, communicating with your cinematographer over a crackly walkie-talkie. You tell them to pan left, they pan left, but it accidentally knock over a lamp.
And you can't see the lamp.
Right. You tell them to fix the lamp, they fix the lamp, but now the camera's out of focus. At some point, you just want to sprint out of the trailer, grab the camera with your own 2 hands, and frame the shot yourself.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Anthropic has engineered a solution that fundamentally alters that dynamic. They are merging the traditional WYSIWG editor. What you see is what you get, the visual interfaces of tools like Figma or Dreamweaver with the generative capabilities of an LLM.
Bringing the best of both worlds together.
Exactly. They have acknowledged that natural language is a brilliant interface for broad structural ideation, but it is a profoundly terrible interface for micro-adjustments in 2-dimensional visual space.
So the prototype generates, and Elliot admits the first pass is a little garish. He gave it way too much leeway with his light mode colors. But it's not a static image. It is a fully functioning interactive application mockup.
It has working parts.
Yeah, it has working dropdowns, a functioning search bar, the pill navigation is active.
Well,
And when he wants to change that garish color, he clicks into edit mode. Suddenly, he's just clicking directly on a specific color accent at the top of the app and manually sliding a color wheel to change it to white. He selects text and changes line heights using custom sliders.
let's break down the mechanics of what happens when he uses those manual sliders. On the surface, it feels exactly like using standard design software.
Feels just like Photoshop or Canva.
Right. But beneath the surface, the AI is performing live translation. When Elliot drags that slider to change the color to white, the AI is intercepting that visual input, locating the exact corresponding CSS class in the live code base, rewriting the hex code to white, and pushing that update to the live render instantly.
It's doing all that coding in the blink of an eye.
The human is editing the visual paint, the AI is editing the underlying structural code.
But wait, let me jump in here and play devil's advocate, because this is where I start to question the revolutionary aspect of this. If I can just click and edit the design myself, manually clicking a color wheel and dragging a slider to fix the line height, aren't we just going back to a traditional tool like Canva or Figma?
That's a fair question.
Right. Like, if I'm doing the manual visual labor anyway, what is the AI actually contributing during this editing phase?
That is a crucial distinction to make. In a traditional vector-based design tool like Figma, you are manipulating absolute layers. If you decide that a navigation bar shouldn't be at the top of the screen but rather on the left side, you have to manually group the icons, ungroup the text, drag the entire container to the left, resize the main content window to accommodate the new sidebar, and realign dozens of individual vector shapes.
It's a ton of manual, tedious labor.
Exactly. It is manual labor. In Claude Design, when Elliot leaves a contextual comment on a pill button saying, "Make this bigger and center," the AI recalculates all of the spatial relationships.
Meaning it understands that making the button bigger affects the things around it.
Exactly. The AI relies on its contextual understanding of the document object model, or the DOM. It calculates the necessary margins and padding dynamically so that increasing the button size doesn't shatter the entire page layout.
Oh, wow. Right.
It rewrites the structural HTML and CSS architecture instantly. You are tweaking the aesthetic direction. The AI is managing the load-bearing walls of the code.
Okay, that makes sense. It's not just moving pixels, it's rebuilding the structure behind the pixels. But the commenting and the sliders aren't even the wildest part. Elliot selects a digital pen tool, and he literally draws a rough, messy, squiggly underline beneath the words AI Networker directly on the mockup.
He just scribbles on the screen.
Yeah, he doesn't type anything, he just draws a line, hits a button to send that visual data to the AI, and says he wants the element underlined exactly how he drew it. And the AI just complies. It turns his messy digital ink into a perfectly coded, stylized underline.
To appreciate what just happened there, we have to dive into the computational mechanics of the Opus 4.7 vision model. How does a language model see a squiggly line and turn it into code?
It sounds like magic, honestly.
Well, first, the AI takes a literal screenshot of the current user interface state. It overlays a mathematical coordinate grid across that image. It then runs edge detection algorithms to locate the precise X and Y coordinates of Elliot's hand-drawn line.
So it's locating the exact pixels where he dragged his mouse.
Correct. But a pixel is just a dot of color. The AI then has to map those visual coordinates back to the underlying digital structure, the DOM tree.
Right, tying the picture back to the code.
Exactly. It cross-references the location of the squiggly line with the bounding boxes of the HTML elements. It deduces, mathematically, that the squiggly line sits directly beneath a specific header 1 text tag.
That is so smart.
Once it makes that spatial to structural connection, it generates the specific CSS property, perhaps a custom border bottom or a stylized SVG underline, and injects it directly into the code associated with that specific header. It is seamlessly mapping raw, unstructured spatial data to highly rigid code architecture in real time.
It's conducting a symphony of data translation. And this collaborative workflow between the user's physical intent and the AI's structural execution sets the stage for the moment in the source material that genuinely made my jaw drop.
The data generation phase.
Yes, because it's one thing for an AI to draw a nice-looking button or underline a word based on your spatial cues. It is an entirely different level of intelligence for the AI to fill that app with reality.
We need to contextualize how revolutionary this next step is by looking at the history of the design industry. Since the days of the printing press, layout and content have been treated as two entirely separate silos.
Totally disconnected from each other.
Right. A typographer or a UI designer focuses on the shape of the container. Because they usually don't have the final text or the actual database of information when they're designing, they rely on lorem ipsum.
Right, that scrambled piece of Latin text by Cicero that acts as a placeholder.
Exactly. They design the beautiful symmetrical container, and someone else, usually months later, is burdened with the task of cramming real, asymmetrical, messy data into that pristine design.
And Elliot fully expected to follow that exact traditional workflow. When he first prompted the AI about his Cornwall networking event, he explicitly commanded it to use placeholder data.
He was very clear about that.
The direct quote from his prompt is, "Let's just use demo information at the moment, so make up the information. I just want to focus on the design." He provided his 3 speakers, asked for the 4 structural sections, and assumed the AI would generate generic gray boxes, fake addresses, and lorem ipsum paragraphs. He just wanted to see if the pill navigation looked decent.
The AI, however, exhibited a level of autonomous agency that fundamentally ignored the constraint of using fake data. Or rather, it interpreted the overarching goal designing a functional event app as requiring a deeper level of contextual fidelity.
So Elliot clicks over to the where to stay and how to get there tabs on his newly generated mockup. He's casually scrolling, expecting to see Hotel Lorem Ipsum, and suddenly he stops dead. He realizes he's looking at actual, real-world businesses.
Real places in Cornwall.
Yes. The AI has populated the mockup with a place called Hubbox Truro. It lists Sands in the city and a place called the Coffee Stop. Elliot is audibly stunned in his video. He points out that these are not generated names. These are real establishments located in Truro, Cornwall.
The AI transitioned seamlessly from a graphic designer into an autonomous research agent. It didn't just structure the page. It queried its internal knowledge base or potentially executed a live retrieval process to map the real-world geography of the event location Elliot had merely casually mentioned in the initial prompt.
And it goes so much deeper than just grabbing a few restaurant names.
Yeah.
It pulled in complex logistical data. It found the actual Truro train station. It mapped out the roads to get there and detailed instructions on how attendees could fly into Newey Airport.
Which is incredibly specific.
Right. It found real, physical car parks in the immediate vicinity and autonomously calculated the actual walking times from those specific car parks to the implied venue area.
Hmm.
And then in the where to stay section, it pulled in a real local hotel called the Alverton. And it didn't just list the name and the address, it actually injected a specific room rate into the UI mockup.
This raises an incredibly important question about the evolution of digital software. Claude Design is forcibly merging the historically siloed fields of design and content.
It's doing both jobs at once.
It recognizes a fundamental truth about user experience. A design is only as good as its ability to accommodate the actual shape of real-world data.
That makes perfect sense.
A fake Latin paragraph looks perfectly symmetrical and aesthetically pleasing. But a real hotel address, complete with postal codes, localized phone number formats, and messy local amenities, breaks that symmetry. By autonomously sourcing and injecting real data during the rapid prototyping phase, the AI ensures the design will actually survive contact with reality.
So what does this all mean for you as a user? The guy asked for fake data, and the AI basically planned the logistics for a real corporate retreat.
It's acting like a fully fledged assistant.
They acted as an event planner, a travel agent, a researcher, and a UI designer simultaneously. But I have to push back hard on the reliability of this, and frankly, the liability.
Okay, let's hear.
If this model is pulling room rates for the Alverton Hotel without being asked, how incredibly dangerous is it to trust an AI with live consumer data in a mock-up? What if those rates are complete hallucinations based on outdated training data from 2 years ago?
That is a very real risk.
What if it hallucinated the walking times from the car park? If you export this app, build it, and hand it to an attendee, and they show up expecting a 100-pound room rate that the AI completely fabricated just because it mathematically decided the number 100, look aesthetically pleasing in that specific layout.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a massive liability for the event organizer.
Your skepticism is not just warranted, it is the central tension of autonomous AI agents. Elliot himself highlights this exact concern in the walkthrough. He explicitly states, "I don't know how accurate those room rates are."
Because he didn't give it to the AI, it just guessed or scraped it.
Right. When an AI transitions from generating subjective visual concepts to fetching objective real-world data, the burden of verification on the human users skyrockets.
Let's double-check everything.
Exactly. The AI understood the holistic intent of an event app. It reasoned logically that if human beings are traveling to an event, they require sustenance, lodging, and transportation infrastructure. It executed tasks far outside the scope of graphic design to fulfill that holistic need. But it is fundamentally an AI.
Right.
Unless heavily constrained by specific API rules, it prioritizes the seamless completion of the requested pattern over the absolute factual accuracy of the data it scrapes.
It's the ultimate proactive assistant, but it lacks any sense of boundaries. It's like hiring a brilliant intern who books a non-refundable first-class flight to Chicago for you just because they overheard you mention you might want to visit the city next month. It's too helpful for its own good.
That is a fantastic way to look at it. And yet, from a pure prototyping perspective, the value of that overreach is undeniable.
How so?
Even if the room rate is slightly inaccurate, providing the designer with the authentic structural cadence of real local information forces the design to be robust. It shatters the dangerous illusion of the perfect mockup.
Oh, because real words are messy.
Exactly. A real Welsh or Cornish town name is significantly longer than a standard English word. Forcing the AI to build the UI around those lengthy real-world strings ensures the text boxes won't break when the real database is eventually hooked up. It forces the human creator to see what the app will actually feel like in the hands of a user navigating the physical streets of Cornwall.
Paint that picture in your mind for a second. Imagine you are Elliot. You ask for a simple structural wireframe just to see if your navigation buttons are the right color. You click the Where to Stay tab, expecting a gray box.
And you get a real itinerary.
Yeah, instead, you're suddenly looking at a highly stylized, brand-perfect menu recommending you grab a flat white at the coffee stop down the street before checking into the Alverton, complete with walking distances. It stops being a picture of an app. It feels like a fully realized, breathing digital ecosystem that simply willed itself into existence in a matter of minutes based on a casual prompt.
And that profound realization brings us to the final and arguably most consequential stage of this entire workflow.
The handoff phase.
Yes. We now have a beautifully designed, structurally sound, deeply researched, fully interactive prototype. But as Elliot noted early in his process, a picture of an app, even an interactive one running on local CSS, isn't an actual deployable software application.
Right, it's just a really good preview.
How do we extract this from Anthropic's sandbox and push it into the real world? And more importantly, what is the underlying economic and computational toll for wielding this kind of power?
Well, the export options are pretty incredible. Elliot navigates to the export functions, and the list of options is incredibly robust. You can export the entire interactive flow as a flat PDF. You can kick it out as a PowerPoint presentation.
PPTX, right?
Right. You can grab the raw HTML and CSS code if you want to manually paste it into your own traditional code base. You can even export the design directly into Canva.
Which is huge.
It is massive for marketing departments. They can take app designs and immediately chop them up into social media collateral without bothering the engineering team.
But the ultimate feature, the one that truly closes the loop on this new paradigm, is the button labeled Hand Off to Claude Code.
This part is mechanically wild to me. The user has this interactive design file living in the cloud. They click Hand Off to Claude Code, and it provides a specific terminal command. Elliot copies this command, opens up a new session in Claude Code, which is Anthropic's local command line coding agent that lives on his actual machine, and just pastes it in.
Let's break down the API architecture of what occurs when he hits enter on that command, because it is an astonishing piece of systems integration.
Yeah, what's happening behind the scenes there?
When Elliot pastes that string into his local terminal, the Anthropic API reaches from his local machine back into his secure cloud account. It fetches the unique URL of the specific design file he just spent the last 30 minutes tweaking.
So it's grabbing all his work.
All of it. The local agent downloads and ingests the entirety of that CSS, the HTML DOM structure, the imported brand guidelines, the accessibility rules, and all of the real-world contextual data about Cornwall. And then Claude Code immediately begins writing the back-end logic, setting up the file structures, and implementing the actual functional software application based on that prototype.
It is exactly like handing a three-dimensional, highly detailed holographic blueprint to a crew of automated robot construction workers, and they instantly start pouring the digital concrete and routing the digital plumbing.
It's an entirely closed-loop ecosystem.
Yeah, Anthropic handles the ideation phase, they execute the visual design phase, they perform the autonomous data population, and then their local agent handles the final software engineering.
It is vertical integration at the artificial intelligence level. The user never has to leave the Anthropic ecosystem from the moment a vague idea pops into their head to the moment they have a functional, deployable application.
But, as you alluded to, achieving that level of seamless, frictionless integration demands a staggering computational cost.
The hidden cost.
The economic reality check. Elliot finds this out the hard way at the end of his walkthrough. He decides to check his usage tab to see how much of his limit he has burned through during this experiment. Keep in mind, he is operating on a pro plan.
He's a paying subscriber.
Right. He uploaded a folder of fonts, waited 15 minutes for the AI to generate a design system, and built exactly one interactive prototype of a relatively simple event app. That is the entirety of his session. And the system dashboard informs him that he has utilized 65% of his entire weekly credit window. 65%. From one single test run.
It is an absolute resource sink.
I have to aggressively push back on the viability of this tool for normal users or even normal design teams. If one single test run eats almost 70% of a professional weekly allowance, this is not a sandbox tool designed for playful ideation.
No, it's definitely not.
It isn't a sketchbook.
Yeah.
This is a sniper rifle you can't afford to miss. This is a bespoke tailoring service where every single cut of the fabric costs a fortune. You absolutely cannot afford to make a mistake.
You have to be very intentional.
Exactly. Does this massive compute cost completely undermine the whole playful vibe coding nature that the tool is being marketed as? If I am terrified of hitting my token limit and being locked out of my account until next Tuesday, I am absolutely not going to experiment. I am not going to draw squiggly lines on the screen just to see what the AI does with them. I'm going to be paralyzed by the cost of every single prompt.
Your analogy of the bespoke tailor is incredibly apt. The aesthetic of vibe coding implies a relaxed, highly iterative, almost sloppy process. Let's just throw some vague ideas at the AI and see what sticks.
Yeah, but you can't actually do that.
Right, because the underlying economics of the computational power enforce extreme, rigid discipline. We have to consider the compute cost of running the Opus 4.7 vision model at this scale. This isn't just a model generating text sequentially.
It's doing a million things at once.
It is processing massive visual inputs, running edge detection on screen grabs, cross-referencing global brand guidelines in real time, dynamically generating complex CSS and HTML, constantly analyzing accessibility contrast ratios, and simultaneously querying external databases for real-world geographical data. Doing all of that concurrently requires immense server power and GPU allocation.
It is essentially orchestrating a dozen highly specialized, heavy AI agents simultaneously just to maintain the illusion of a seamless, simple user interface.
Precisely. And this economic reality is going to force a massive psychological shift in user behavior.
How so?
For the last couple of years, during the boom of text-based language models, we have been conditioned to act as spammers. If we don't like the paragraph the AI wrote, we just mash the regenerate button.
Oh, guilty as charged. I do that all the time.
We all do, because it costs fractions of a cent. The friction is zero. But with Claude Design, users are going to have to become incredibly deliberate. You cannot mash the regenerate button when every single iteration burns through a massive chunk of your professional allowance.
Which is incredibly ironic. We have finally built a tool so advanced that it handles all of the tedious graphic design and software coding for you. But it is so expensive to run that it forces the human user to revert back to being a meticulous, traditional project manager.
You really do have to manage it.
You have to gather all your assets perfectly beforehand. You have to write a flawless, comprehensive, creative brief. You have to know exactly what you want before you ask the AI to build it, or you go bankrupt on tokens.
It is the ultimate paradox of high-end AI orchestration. The actual execution of the code becomes entirely frictionless, but the cost of that friction is simply transferred to the compute layer, which in turn financially limits how freely the human can play.
It's pay to play, but the stakes are really high.
As Elliot noted in his video, if you are doing anything of substantial weight, you are going to hit your design limits incredibly quickly on a standard Pro plan. This is undoubtedly why Anthropic initially rolled this out to Pro Max team plans. This level of architectural generation is designed for enterprise budgets, not casual weekend hobbyists.
So we have traversed quite a complex landscape today. Let's briefly recap exactly what we've uncovered for you, our listener, during this deep dive.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has. We started with a guy logging into his dashboard after lunch, armed with nothing more than a handful of font files, a corporate logo, and some incredibly vague instructions about wanting a punchy and relaxed vibe.
And from there, we saw the system take over.
Yeah, we examined how an AI took that minimal, highly subjective input and spent 15 computationally heavy minutes autonomously building a robust CSS design system. It was extracting hex codes and typographical hierarchies to digitize human emotion.
From there, we explored how the interface moves entirely past the frustrating conversational back and forth loop. We saw how the Opus 4.7 vision model allows a user to refine an app mockup using direct visual edits, custom sliders, and raw physical drawing.
Like that squiggly line.
Exactly, mapping those two-dimensional spatial actions to complex, load-bearing DOM code changes in real time.
And then we unpacked the mechanics behind that true aha
Yeah.
moment, right? The realization that the AI was actively ignoring the request for fake placeholder text and was instead acting as an autonomous research agent.
Fetching the real Cornwall data.
Right. It queried real-world Cornwall locations, pulled in actual hotel rates, local coffee shops, and genuine walking distances to stress-test the design with asymmetrical reality.
And finally, we broke down the API architecture of the handoff, seeing how this entire package can be piped seamlessly to a local CLI agent to build the final software.
All while the user navigates the crippling economic reality of a rapidly depleting token limit.
It is a profound look at a closed-loop system of creation, stretching from the inception of a brand identity to the final execution of functional code.
And to you listening right now, whether you are a product manager prepping for a massive Q3 roadmap meeting, an engineer leading a dev team, or you are just intensely curious about how the digital landscape is being fundamentally terraformed, this source material represents an undeniable shift in how human ideas become reality.
The landscape is definitely changing.
We are crossing a threshold. The bottleneck for creating high-level digital products is no longer your technical ability. It is no longer about whether you memorize CSS properties or mastered Figma layer management or know how to query a database API.
The AI handles the labor now.
The tools are now capable of executing the labor. The only bottlenecks left are your imagination, your ability to provide deliberate, contextual constraints, and of course your compute budget.
We are rapidly shifting out of the role of manual laborers and into the role of high-level directors.
Which leaves us with a final lingering thought for you to mull over today. If an artificial intelligence can mathematically deduce and establish your brand identity, if it can flawlessly execute your visual design.
If it possesses the autonomous agency to research the necessary real-world data.
Right, to populate your app, and if you can literally write the final code base to deploy the software.
Yeah.
At what point in the very near future does the human stop being the creator entirely and simply become the approver?
That is the philosophical frontier we are standing on.
When the execution of an idea is 100% automated by machines, is human taste the only viable skill left in the economy? When the digital skyscraper builds itself from a single sticky note, do we even need architects anymore, or just critics who know what a beautiful building looks like?
It's a huge question to consider.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of tomorrow. We promise to keep you well-informed and ahead of the curve as this technology continues to unfold and reshape our world. Until next time, keep questioning the blueprints.